Good evening and welcome to another episode of Late Night with Lenette. I'm Lenette Peterson, your host. I saw this little interesting ditty on our infamous governor in the paper. And it says, the New Hampshire House took an important step toward improving government accountability and reducing corruption. That sounds phenomenal. Our state reps got something right. Yeah, it's been a challenging term, but Governor Maggie Hassan is standing by corruption after the House approved a bill to reform the state civil forfeiture statutes by voice vote. Hassan vowed to veto it should it reach her desk. Really, Governor? What are you going to do for New Hampshire citizens? When are you going to stand for New Hampshire citizens? What is the last thing you've done for us of any good merit? It's time to say no to Maggie Hassan. You know, she needs to find a new hobby. Governor, like I said earlier in an episode, I'm sure there's a library that needs a storyteller. You'd be great at it. States, U.S. Senate, no. We need someone who's going to stand up for New Hampshire residents. We need someone who's going to actually do something for New Hampshire citizens. Vote for Kelly Ayotte. Kelly has proven record. She stands for New Hampshire. She looks out for New Hampshire. Maggie looks out for herself. Vote no to Maggie Hassan. My guest this evening is known in Merrimack, maybe not as well known as he'd like to be.
I'm working on it.
Working on it. Dan Hynes, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Lenette.
You are most welcome. Now, you have a day job as a lawyer, correct?
Yes, so my day job as a lawyer, I primarily do criminal defense, DWI defense, and the occasional pro bono issues that interest me. First Amendment, religious issues, really important.
Oh, nice.
And the civil asset forfeiture that you just mentioned, I think that's a really important topic. I'm glad it's getting some traction lately. So a lot of people aren't really familiar with what civil asset forfeiture is. So if you're charged with a crime, if the crime is related to money, let's say you're selling drugs and you make a profit off that drugs, and let's say you have thousands of dollars on you at the time you're arrested, the police will often take that money. Now, if it's linked to a crime, that's probably appropriate. However, we need certain safeguards in place. So you don't actually have to be committed or convicted of that crime for the government to take your money. And oftentimes, the relationship between the money and the crime is really tenuous at best. I mean, in drug cases, it's often obvious, but in many other cases, they essentially want you to prove where you got that money from. And it's really an issue that needs to be addressed. I think particularly if we're not going to require a conviction first, we need to have some safeguards in place, whether it be the state proving clear and convincing evidence, which is a little less than beyond a reasonable doubt, that money is actually related to a crime. I think another problem with the civil asset forfeiture is it often rewards police departments from taking the assets. A lot of times they either get to keep it or somehow get money, whether it's the federal or whoever gives them a portion of it. So there's really an incentive for the state, unfortunately, to take people's property.
Right. Now, this also comes into play with firearms, I would think.
Yes. So New Hampshire, a very pro-firearm friendly state, in my opinion.
Yep.
And yeah, I haven't had people personally who have had their guns confiscated, but I'm sure it happens. If you just happen to have a gun and get arrested, who's to say the police don't want to take it for something completely unrelated? So it certainly needs a lot of protections. I think this bill, it was a step in the right direction, and it'd be unfortunate if Maggie wants to veto it.
Yeah, well, it's good for New Hampshire, so Maggie will veto it. Anything good for New Hampshire, she vetoes.
You got to put it at the bottom of the bill. This is not good for New Hampshire. Then I'll get passed.
Exactly. Now, I got a question for you. Is there a difference between DUI and DWI?
Nope. So DUI, the acronym stands for driving under the influence, whereas DWI is driving while intoxicated. New Hampshire legislature sort of confuses the words throughout this statute. So it is called DWI, but if you read the statute, it's driving while your ability is impaired. So it's also DUI, driving under the influence. So New Hampshire has some of the strictest DWI laws in the country. It's impairment to any degree. So a lot of people don't recognize that. I think one of the issues that New Hampshire has addressed recently, a few years ago, they expanded DWI to prescription drugs. So it used to be just any controlled substance, whether it be marijuana, heroin, or things like that. Now it's a lot of prescription drugs. And I think people need to be made aware of that. So a lot of people who get arrested for driving under the influence of drugs, they come to me and say, hey, I have a prescription for that. I try to explain to them that that doesn't make it legal. It's the same as alcohol. I can lawfully drink alcohol, but if I'm going to drive and that's going to impair my ability to drive, that's where it becomes illegal. So I would hopefully the state can make some education to this, because prescription drugs, I mean, it's a major concern in the state.
Oh yeah, prescription drugs, they're too often they're given out. People take them as candy, and they're going to impair your driving. And if you're on them, you're going to be stopped. I think is it Monday morning or Tuesday morning in the Union Leader, I see the list of all those people who have been, charged DUI in the state. And it's broken down by town, and you can just look through. I like looking through the towns that I know and see who. I've recognized a few names in there, a couple former students, and it's like, oh, so this is what they're doing with their free time. So now you have, you're wearing orange for a particular reason.
Yes. So last election term, 2 years ago, I ran for state senate, and
Yes.
I decided to use orange as my campaign color.
Yes.
I like orange. It stands out. So trying to do something different, letting people know, hey, I'm not like all the other candidates. So it's just one little way to stand out, to at least get people's attention.
Yep. And so now there's going to be a primary coming up in September. People are going to be able to get their name on the ballot this coming June.
Yes.
Are you putting your name on the ballot for something this go
Yes.
round?
So I expect to be running for House Rep this time.
Very good.
I expect there will be a primary. I'm okay with that. Senator Gary Daniels, I expect will be rerunning. He's a great senator in my mind. I would probably be voting 95% the same way as him. So there's no reason for me to want to run for that race.
Well, there you go. So now, what interests you in state rep?
Yep. So I would like to be on the Criminal Justice Committee. I think there's a lot of issues there that can be addressed. I think it can help to have an attorney and a criminal defense lawyer on that committee.
Very good. Now, are there certain platform issues that you'd be running on?
Yep, so generally a smaller government's what I want to run on. So when I went to speak with people last time, I told them I'm a small business owner for a smaller government. I think that the government, certainly there's things that they provide, education, an incredibly useful thing that I wouldn't want to cut, but other things, I think the government is just, whether it's excess regulations, increased taxes, just telling people how they can live their life, I don't think that's the proper role for government. I think I want the government to be out of my wallet and out of my bedroom.
Don't we all?
Well,
no,
not all.
not all. I should say all Republicans. Well, most Republicans, and some Republicans. I mean, they're painful. They run as stinking rhinos. They get elected as a Republican and they vote as a Democrat. And
yeah, I'm really disappointed with Medicaid expansion this last time. That was one of the things I ran on previously, as I was opposed to the Senate passing it. Now this time, the House trying to curb the sunset provision. And unfortunately, a rather large amount of Merrimack Republicans supported the Medicaid expansion. And they try to rationalize it. At the end of the day, I just don't think it's right for New Hampshire. I think it's bad for everyone. It's raising taxes, and I think it's going to lead to inadequate health care.
Exactly. I'm the same with you. Too many Republicans voted for it, and too many from Merrimack voted for it. And another thing, Medicaid expansion could also lead to a state income tax. And that's certainly something we don't need.
It's going to have to lead to an income tax. I mean, if the federal government's funding it 100%, that's, I guess, better than nothing in the meantime. But that 100% is not going to stay forever. And once we get all these people on Medicaid, it's going to be very difficult to tell them, no, we just want to stop your health insurance. I think that will lead to outrage, and I just don't foresee that happening. The government's going to have to make up money somewhere if they're going to raise business profit tax again, which is already incredibly high. We have one of the worst business taxes in the country. I try telling people our business tax is twice as much as Massachusetts, just about. That's pretty much shocking to people.
I know they're known as Taxachusetts, but yet companies are leaving New Hampshire and going to Massachusetts because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. I mean, New Hampshire's turning into a Taxachusetts, and that's wrong. That is so wrong. We're getting and unfortunately, too many liberals from Massachusetts have been moving up to New Hampshire because they got sick of what was happening to Massachusetts. They're doing the same thing in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I don't understand that. So.
No kidding. I mean, I just don't get it. You know, you polluted your own state. Now you're coming up to New Hampshire and you're polluting New Hampshire
Maybe
with
we
your
can
liberal
send them
thinking.
to Vermont.
Yeah, no kidding.
Keep going.
Yeah, and Vermont used to be the same way. Vermont was very Republican. Too many stinking liberals moved there as well. And these, stinking liberals are ruining New Hampshire and Vermont. Well, no, Vermont's gone. Vermont is just, they drank the Kool-Aid. There's just no saving Vermont. But we're still a purple state. There's hope for New Hampshire.
Yeah, we need to trade people with Vermont and Massachusetts. They can have all the tax increasing people and give us all the people who don't want those tax increases.
Yeah, and a red flag to New Hampshire should be BAE Systems. They're sending a project out of Nashua to Texas. If they start sending projects out of New Hampshire to Texas, BAE's the biggest number one employer in the state. They start sending people away. Who's going to employ New Hampshire?
Yeah, I think the governor can take a lot of blame for this besides the business profit tax. I mean, what is the governor doing to attract businesses here? I mean, that should be one of her priorities.
Exactly. No, her priority is campaign funding. She's spending all her time raising campaign funding. So no, she hasn't been looking at New Hampshire since she was reelected. That was her. Once she got her foot in the door, sworn in for the reelection, her focus has been reelection and raising campaign funds. Yeah, shame on you, Maggie. Shame on you. Get a new hobby. So where do you stand on Second Amendment rights?
Yep, so I am pro-Second Amendment, member of the NRA. I have concealed carry permit. I own firearms. I don't hunt, but I use firearms for target practice. Really enjoy skeet shooting and self-defense. I think that's the main reason we have the Second Amendment. So that's where I stand on firearms. I would not limit firearms, and I'm pro constitutional carry. So incredibly disappointing that Maggie is vetoing that.
Again.
A lot of Democrats even are in favor of that. If we could just get a few more on our side, just override that veto.
Exactly. That is a bipartisan issue. My last term up there, a bill came, I was on House Judiciary. A gun bill came to my committee. It was civil immunity for gun owners if their gun was stolen and used in a crime. My committee wanted to kill it. They said no, it had to be a secured gun, and I argued a secured gun is a useless gun.
Yes.
And so they said, well, forget it, and they killed it. So I told them, don't put it on consent. I'm gonna fight it. Fought it on the House floor. We got it overturned. My committee voted ITL. We got it overturned on the House floor and got it passed on the House floor. Only one Republican voted against me, and to call her a Republican is pretty sad. This rep is out of Pelham, Decasian, and she's the biggest rhino in the House. She never votes Republican. I think she has the lowest HRA score of any Republican. But several Democrats voted for it. In fact, it was a Democrat-sponsored bill. Democrats are, a good portion of them are pro-Second Amendment. They wanted to be safe too.
Yeah, this last term I was really surprised at the Democrat gun bill. So they wanted to require everyone to have insurance on their bill. Absolutely absurd. And
exactly.
We saw the way the vote went on that. I think it was about 90% opposed to that and 10% in favor of it. So that's common sense gun law to some people. Insurance on guns, I guess.
Yeah. Now, you like shooting skeet. Have you ever used there's some of the clay pigeons that can be used as rabbits? Have you ever done that?
No, I just use the little orange ones and throw them up and shoot. Yeah,
well, the orange ones, we have a skeet machine as well. We shoot skeet. But some of what you do is you can, and I think I don't know if it's certain ones, that you throw it on the ground and it is a rabbit.
Oh, wow.
And so you shoot it on the ground as it rolls across the ground. I think it's a little sturdier. It's not going to break. The clay pigeons, you do that with it. you don't get a chance to shoot it. The rabbit dies. But it's pretty fun. And if we don't want to lug the skeet machine out to the sand pit, we'll just bring it and shoot the rabbits. Not real rabbits, folks. I am not into hunting. I'm into target practice. But that's another good way instead of shooting the skeet.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So you're pro Second Amendment, pro small business. Any other big issue that you're running on or campaigning on?
I'm pro-life. It's an important issue to me. It's not one of that I put at the front. And in my opinion, most Republicans do come down pro-life and have been doing good in this state. So I'm really disappointed in the abortion bill recently. I mean, I can't understand late-term abortions at all. So
yeah, that is beyond deplorable, late-term abortion. That, to me, it's murder.
Yes.
You can't call it an abortion. It's called murder. Yeah. That's just that's a whole show in itself, for sure. Now, how about Common Core standards?
Yes, so I oppose Common Core for two reasons. One, I don't think it makes any sense and is a bad approach. But second, I'm in favor of local control. So I think really teachers, students, principals, they know what's going to work best for the child. To have the federal government come in and tell New Hampshire, hey, this works or doesn't work in another state, here's a bunch of money, do what we say, that's just overreaching by the federal government. New Hampshire, I think, has to get away from that and really leave the local control in charge.
Exactly. Local control. I mean, folks, if you look at what the federal government is in charge of, look what they did to the post office. I mean, hello, that's the biggest train wreck going. Yeah, look at Social Security. They're in charge of Social Security. Really? And I call it the Unaffordable Care Act. Yep. The Unaffordable Care Act has forced more people to lose their insurance. People that lost their insurance now can't afford to get the Unaffordable Care Act. They're fined for not getting it. People that had decent insurance, because it wasn't to the level that they wanted with the Unaffordable Care Act, lost it. I mean, it's a disgrace.
Yeah, I still have health insurance. I'm taking the fine. Hopefully the next Republican president will fix this for me.
Exactly.
Hopeful.
And companies that had good insurance. My husband works for BAE Systems. We had a nice Cadillac HMO. Oh my goodness, that was slashed to nothing. Our copay is gigantic. What they cover is a lot smaller. The the insurance industry is just amok. It's running amok. It's useless compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, I think New Hampshire really has to step up and allow more medical providers. I think that's the first thing we need to do to address health insurance in this state. If you have a monopoly or two companies in charge, that's terrible for pricing.
Exactly. Open the market up. Let people bid. Let corporations bid on insurance. Right. You'll see that people are going to start catering to their customers.
Definitely.
Yeah, and get control of these drug companies. Unfortunately, too many doctors are getting payoffs from drug companies so they can jack up the prices. Hey, if you find a medication that works, well, now we're going to raise the price 300 times of what it was when we were first testing it.
Yeah, that's the problem if the government, federal government, who ultimately we're funding as taxpayers, is just pouring money into the problem. There's no incentive for people to keep costs low because they know the government will just pay it.
Exactly. And the FDA, that's another branch of the government that's running amok now with letting China now supply our chicken. I think it's Purdue who's is having some of their chickens processed over in China. That's just too scary for words. I think the FDA is overstepping their boundaries, and it's the next group that should go.
Yeah, I think that says a lot. If food can come from China and still be cheaper than we can grow it here, there's something's wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly. And what they do with fish, oh my word! I mean, it's really sad when you go to the grocery store and you have to look at the fish counter and say, "No, I'm not getting that. That country's way too off." You know that they're bleaching and everything else. You try to find something.
Yeah.
We're surrounded with water. Why can't the fish come from our own fishermen?
You would think the ocean right near us would provide plenty of fish.
Exactly. Yeah, the regulations are just killing this country. Every aspect. Yeah. So, you say you like to go shooting. What else do you like to do fun other than get people, help people get out of their court case? Yeah.
Yep. So I enjoy poker.
There you go.
One of the small bills that I would like to see changed is right now poker is for profit unless you fall under one of the exceptions. Generally, you can't do that. I think the problem with it is gambling in the state is defined as a game of chance. I don't think poker is a game of chance. I think it's a game of skill, math, and a lot of different things. So One court in, I believe, New York has actually came down with this, so it could go to court and one could argue that. But I know some people have been putting in for bills to get poker specifically declared not a game of chance. I would like to see that go through. So it's my understanding it gets close, but lobbyists keep defeating.
Yes, I had a show just a few weeks ago on lobbying, and in fact, Orange is for Lobbyist was the name of the show because they have to wear orange name tags, and that's what it got down to. I found out that how they got the orange name tags at first, they wanted them to wear orange jackets, because they wanted the lobbyists to stand out so people would know they were lobbyists. But they settled on orange name tags. I can see up in the gallery this big pumpkin patch of orange jackets with all the lobbyists up in the gallery.
Yeah, well, don't mistake me for a lobbyist.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
Make sure not to have a badge. I love to travel. A few
Yep.
months ago, I was fortunate enough to be able to travel around the world. So
Oh, wow.
I went to Iceland, Germany, Singapore, Australia, Hawaii, and then back. And that's great. I love seeing different cultures and how the rest of the world acts and people getting together and trying different foods. So love to travel.
Boy, that's now. How long was that trip?
That trip was right around a month. My employee was not that happy with me abandoning him for a month.
I
but-
bet. Wow. Now, what was the most interesting country of all of them that you went to?
I really enjoyed Singapore. So Singapore, it's an interesting makeup about, they speak English very well, and I was really surprised at how well off that country is. So I saw more $100,000 plus cars in 3 days than I see in New Hampshire all year. Just
Wow.
they were really well off, and I really like how the different cultures come together. So in just the city of Singapore, there's Little India, and then you go a few blocks or a mile or so, and then there's Chinatown. So I really enjoyed those places, and I think it's different. A lot of different people go to Singapore, so it's really a great place. I would recommend anyone who's in Southeast Asia check out Singapore.
Wow. Now, you said you went to Iceland.
Yes.
Now, what was that like?
So Iceland's I used as a stopover. Unfortunately, the time of year that I went to Iceland was rather depressing. So
Yeah.
it was pretty cold, but being from New Hampshire, I don't care about the cold
there
or the
you go.
snow. but being dark a lot of the time,
Yeah.
that I didn't care for so much.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. Well, we lived in North Bay, Ontario for 2 years. And North Bay, Ontario is 4.5 hours north of Toronto. And winter, we had to turn our our headlights on about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But in the summer, it was great. We had to buy black curtains and shades for our oldest daughter, because 10 o'clock at night the sun was still up, and she said, "No, it's not time to go to bed. It's still light out." So yeah, you kind of blew it in the time of year you went there.
Yeah, and one of the things that surprised me is how well everyone spoke English there. And I asked someone about that. I'm like, why is your English proficiency just so high compared to even places in Europe? And they had explained to me it's because all their TV shows are in English. So other countries in Europe, I guess, have their own TV networks, whereas Iceland does not.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, because I've been to all over Europe. My parents and I went to Europe for a month and just rented a car and drove around. And yeah, most television shows were either in German or French or things like that. Every once in a while you could catch little snippets of English. But yeah, television's important.
Yeah.
And learning the language of the television shows is even more important.
Yes.
Oh, very good. So you're gearing up for a state rep election. People are going to be looking for orange signs. Why should Merrimack residents vote for you?
Yep, so last time I put too many signs up, I'm going to curb that a little. But I try to go to everyone's door who votes in the primary. I really want to hear what issues are important to people. And if they tell me what issue is most important, I can let them know my stance on that issue. But I'm definitely going to be available. And really, yeah, I'm there for them. So I want to hear what's important to people, how they want me to vote. Happy to hear from people. And I think there's a lot of work that can be done. If you consider yourself conservative, I would suggest you look at people's voting records in Merrimack. We certainly have some very good reps. I really like Josh Moore, really like Janine Otter. Hope they get reelected. Other reps, you might want to look at certain issues of the record, whether it be guns, Obamacare, raising taxes, and see if that's something you support.
Exactly. Josh and Janine, awesome voting records. Both have an A with the HRA, good conservative votes, and consistent. They're the only two that are consistent, and that's what you need. You need a good, consistent Republican. Look at what these state reps are voting for. Now, you said you had too many signs. How many signs did you have out as state senate?
I bought 1,000 signs and probably put up 600, so it is spread amongst Merrimack, Amherst, Milford, and Wilton.
Right.
But yeah, I know I have too many when someone writes an article to the National Telegraph saying how I and someone else had too many signs up.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I know. My two state rep, I did 100 signs in Merrimack, and I got elected both times. Town council, my first time I had 100 signs up, and almost half were stolen. My first town council race. State rep race, I lost less than a dozen in my state rep races. Town council, I lost almost half my signs the first election.
Yeah, going in, that's why I bought so many signs. Like, well, half of these will be stolen. Yeah, I would say it was incredibly close to zero. So Republicans in this town, very good about not stealing other Republican signs. I guess when you go into non-Republican races, other people might not be so friendly.
There you go. Well, we are at the end of our show. Thank you so much for being on the show. Best of luck in the primary in September. Folks, look at the voting records. Vote for good Republicans, consistent Republicans. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Late Night with Lenette. Good night and God bless.